Marika here from the Deal with Animals, a science and culture podcast about the connection and interaction between humans and other animals. I want to share with you my most recent series, Animals of the Maui Wildfires. It's filled with answers to all the questions you may have had about how animals were rescued and reunited with their families after the fires in Lahaina in 2023. My guests also share their harrowing experiences during those rescues and insights into how the fires changed their community. During this 4-part series, you'll get to know the real people of Maui Humane Society and their uplifting message of unity, compassion, and love for the human and non-human animals of Hawaii.
I can't put it into words, the way our people love each other and care for each other. And what I saw out there, it made it 1,000 times worth it. Any horrible thing I saw or encountered those moments and our people, and I would do it all over again.
Please donate to a special fundraiser we have set up for Maui Humane Society. Every little bit helps. Go to thedealwithanimals.com to donate. And listen to The Deal with Animals, Series 11, Animals of the Maui Wildfires, wherever you get your podcasts.
My number one goal is to make sure that watercolor feels accessible, doable, and fun, whatever stage of painting you're at. And so...
Welcome to Wild Development Studio. Join us as we venture into the breathtaking realm of wildlife arts and untamed adventures. With captivating stories from the field and ideas to dive into the visual arts, we'll ignite your passion for conservation. Get ready to develop something wild.
Welcome to Wild Developments. I'm your guide, Lauren, and today we're talking to Kate Talcott, who is the owner of Splatter and Bloom. If she is not painting up a storm, you can find her chasing after her 2 tiny humans who are probably jumping in puddles. A few of her favorite things are coffee, flowers, books, rain, wearing slippers to work, color explosions, and the overuse of exclamation points. She started Splatter and Bloom after she had her daughter as a way to carve out some me time for herself. What started as a hobby quickly escalated into a full-blown business. It is a family business where she wears the hats of watercolor artist, educator, social media queen, and big-time dreamer. Her husband Andy is the digital designer, shipping guru, and perhaps most importantly, the house barista. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, I'm so happy to chat with you more.
Well, and I am interested to learn more about you and what inspired you to become a watercolor artist.
Oh, yes, I can tell you all about it. So, all right, let's jump into it. I have always been like a crafty, inclined person. Like I liked art class, but it was never really my thing. I was more of a musical theater kind of gal. And I decided that I needed something in my adult life. I used to be a teacher. I was taking time off when I had my daughter, and I was like, I'm just going to start watercolor, something for me. And I haven't put it down. She's almost 5. She'll be 5 by the time this is airing, which is crazy. Aww. So I had painted before then a little bit here and there, but didn't start digging into it until she was born.
So what is it about watercolor that you enjoy?
Oh my gosh. What isn't about watercolor I enjoy? I love it all. I think my biggest thing about watercolor is every time I'm painting, I feel like I learn something new. Literally, that is not a hyperbole. Every single time I sit down to paint, I learn something new. And as a little ADHD girly over here, it's very hard to find something that captivates my heart for more than 8 months to, a year. And this is stuck. And I think it's because there's this discovery every time. It always feels like I'm learning and growing, but it never feels like it's insurmountable. It's it just keeps building on itself in a beautiful way.
I agree. I'm an ADHD girly too. So watercolor, I fall asleep thinking about it. And I feel like every time I paint, it's like a new experience almost every single time. Do you ever feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do it? How am I going to pull this off?
I think I feel this is actually a really good question. I think I could answer this in a couple of different ways. I always trust that I can paint something, right?
Mhm.
Like I used to do commissions and I knew that I could complete the commission. But one thing I struggled with even now is like, I have an idea of how I want it to be in my head. Like I've been working really hard on developing my own personal style rather than, okay, here's the photo. I'm going to imitate the photo and try to get it as lifelike as possible, which is very valuable and helpful and like taught me a lot about realism and all this stuff. But I really also want to explore the watercolory parts of watercolor. And um, I think seeing and knowing what that style is in my head and then conveying it onto paper sometimes feels kind of big and scary, but it's not going to happen unless I practice it. So, you just got to slap some paint on the page and get started, I guess.
That's a good first step. I like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of your subjects that you paint seem like they're primarily nature inspired. Do you do that on purpose, or is that just something that you naturally gravitate towards?
That's a good question. So I have done some house portraits and some like human portraits here and there, but the things I really love to paint are nature because, well, honestly, it's a little bit more forgiving in the sense that like if you paint somebody's dog looking wrong, it's like, oh shoot. But if you paint a leaf looking wrong, nobody's gonna know.
Exactly.
And I just love so watercolor, the way it builds on top of each other. And you know this, like the layering is my favorite thing. We love a glaze here. And a glaze is when you have one layer of dry watercolor and then you add a second layer on top. So you're getting to experience both of those colors at the same time. So a prime example of this would be like with a leaf. I always start with a yellow layer before I add on like a green. And that's because that's how it is. You can see both of those colors exist, and seeing the light through these natural subjects is really, I don't know, it just gets me all excited.
There's
my goodness.
definitely
What is your favorite watercolor like technique?
Oh gosh, I love a good wet on wet. I think it's just so fun to watch the colors like bloom and splatter and bloom.
You got the pen.
And just kind of letting go of that control and letting the paint do its thing. So I think that's a lot of fun. I've been experimenting with some other techniques like doing masking fluid over paint. You have to find the right paper. Yeah, and that was a tip I learned from you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And the right paper or the right masking fluid too, that it won't pull up that first layer of paint.
Yeah. So I've been experimenting with that. So that's kind of, I love, it's just, that's the thing about watercolor. There's always, like you said, something new to learn and a lesson to be had. So
yeah.
And that's what I love about your social media is you're always so positive, but you're also real too. And you promote that anybody can paint. What would be some helpful first tips for somebody wanting to dip their toes in the watercolor, so to speak?
Well, it's so true. I mean, watercolor is one of the first painting types that we learn as a kid, right? You've got your Crayola set. And the reason why watercolor is one of the first things is it's so easy to clean up. Like you literally just need the paints, brushes, the paper, the water, the end. Like you don't need to worry about like washing it up with soap. It's not going to get sticky and harden. Like it will always be ready for you whenever you are. So I find it's very forgiving for people who are just getting into a new art form. But also like you don't need any prior knowledge to be able to experience the joy of watercolor. So you were referring to the wet and wet technique, and this is when you create this wet space on your paper and allowing those paints to commingle and interact and like just blend and play with each other. And let me tell you the secret, the paint's going to do the hard work for you. Like letting the paint go and explore and wander where it will, like that's kind of the beauty of it, is that you don't really have full control over it, right? And I know my type A's are like so I'll get to you type A's, but for folks who are wanting to try something new, it's a really great entry point because you don't need a whole kit and caboodle of supplies. Like you can really get into it with very minimal supplies. And I make watercolor kits. I don't know if I can plug my little thing here, but so finding new hobbies can be really scary, especially if you've been told you're not creative, which whoever told you that, smack them. They're bad. Like whoever you are out there listening, you are creative and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And sometimes that entry point to get access to creativity as adults is really hard. You know, there's art camps and stuff for kids. There's all kinds of stuff for children. But for grown-ups, we don't really have that as easily accessible. So I make watercolor kits with everything you need. It's got the paper, the designs are already on there, the paintbrush, the paints, and it comes with video tutorials as well. So I walk you through it step by step, or if you're like kind of wild and like to go rogue, you can totally do that too. You don't have to listen to me yammering on, but it's super fun and casual and all that. So anybody who told you you're not good at art, lies and slander.
Right. I've done a couple of your kits. I love them. And I want to get my hands on your cat one. It looks so adorable. That's the newest one, isn't it?
You know what? We actually, as we're talking right now, we just came out with Iris Blooms today at noon,
Oh, wow.
which is so exciting. You're going to just be so excited about it. So yummy, yummy, yummy. But yeah, we try to have a new one every month at least. So
that's really cool. And going back to what you said about whoever told you you're not creative, like shame on you. I think as adults, we try to be so perfect all the time. And as kids, we can play and mess up. And I don't think people really realize that as growing artists, I know I've had a ton of really ugly pieces of work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Well, it's so funny too. I find that I'm most like creative when I'm painting with my kids. Like we just kind of have a little painting set out on the front porch. And so we can go paint anytime. And that's when I'm like always I know it's not for Instagram, it's not for whatever. Like I feel this freedom to explore and play. And it doesn't have to have like a purpose other than me just enjoying what's happening on the page, right? Like painting with my kids has been the biggest lesson in painting for me and allowing myself to express myself freely because they're just like, yeah, this feels good, texture.
Yeah, they just are free to explore. I love it. I actually, where did it go? I have a travel journal and I let my niece and nephew paint in it. And they were like, at the time, oh gosh, 3 and 6, 5. And that's what Royce did. That's one of my favorite pages in my book. And Remy did this. She was the younger one.
Look at the bleeds and blooms and blends in those. I mean, you know, they combine colors that you wouldn't think to combine. Like it just, my son goes in really dry at first. He's like, get the paint on. And then he'll like keep adding these like mushy, like watery brush strokes. And it's like, yeah, that's beautiful. I love it.
You see, and that's probably going to be, some of those pieces are probably going to be some of your favorite because it's time that you spent together.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
So speaking of flowers, you have that flower kit that just came out. I am horrible at painting flowers. So do you have any tips? Because they are so like roses and dahlias are so complex looking. How do we, nature's forgiving, but how do we kind of break down a flower so it's not as chaotic?
That's a really great question. I think there are a couple ways that you can go about this, right? So there's like the loose florals, which I definitely enjoy, but are not my main cup of tea in terms of what I like to paint. So I like to paint things that have a lot of more realistic structure, like petal for petal, because the devil's in the details. And by the devil, I mean my most favorite part of it. I love an intricate puzzle piece situation. So give me the ranunculus, give me the dahlias, I'm here for it. So what we're going to do is step one, we have a couple layers. So we're going to work in layers. So step one is we are going to paint the first layer. And this is where that wet and wet gets happening. Like you can really add in like any shadow or light, just to kind of give it some dimension and get rid of that white space. Because otherwise it's just like, good. too much. So we'll do that. We'll get rid of the white space and then we'll let it dry. And the second layer is where I like to add the depth. So this is where we are darkening those like little crannies, and I work petal by petal. Like I like to have my reference image, and I usually have it drawn out in pencil, or my kits have outlines in black like ahead of time. And so I'll do that like petal by petal, and I like to kind of keep the same colors so that I'm keeping, so that I know like when I come back to it, I'm not, oh, that's a different yellow than I was expecting, kind of the benefits of working with just a couple colors. And so once that's done, then I'll get into shadow and detail and like the drier brush pieces. So the second layer is all about like that shading and blending those soft shadows. And then the third layer is a lot more of those like harsher lines, like the little veins in the petals, or the like the real crispy shadows, like the ones that aren't like so soft and smooth, the ones where it's like, oh, there's the petal and it's in the sun. I'm using a lot of hand gestures, so for people listening, I'm very sorry. Or maybe people watching, I don't know.
We're on YouTube too, so that's perfect. So listening to you describe how to paint a flower, and you were talking about different techniques earlier too, and like you stop and you explain what that is. Is that the teacher in you coming out, or was that like a natural shift? Because my first watercolor class that I taught, the person's holding the paintbrush after they dipped into the paint, they put it on the page, and we're moving on to another color. And she's like, do I wash this off in between? And I'm like, oh my God, how did I forget to like tell them that step? Because I teach some things, but I was not in the professional setting like you are. So did that just come naturally to you?
So I used to teach middle schoolers, and I love middle schoolers. They're some of the weirdest, funniest, most awesome kids in the world. But if you do not provide clear instructions, some will go off and do their thing and be fine, but most will be like, what do I do with this paintbrush? So the step-by-step for sure is, I love painting, but I really love sharing the joy of painting with others. Like that's my true calling. That's what makes me feel happy and bring happy tears to my eyes. So, my number one goal is to make sure that watercolor feels accessible, doable, and fun, whatever stage of painting you're at. And so, I love to kind of break it down into those building blocks of how we bring it up. Like if you were to look at a final flower that I painted, you'd be like, what the heck? That's a lot of steps. What is even going on? But like in our painting kits and the tutorials, I will try to break it down as clearly as possible. And like, this is how we're going to blend this out, and we'll do little mini exercises so we get to practice. So I really like to show it in a way that allows you to build on your skills instead of being like, wait, how did you do that? That's so frustrating.
Yeah. So you have you have a knack for teaching. So, and it definitely shows through. Talking about dahlias and the flowers, I'm taking a community gardening class. And we had a local flower lady come talk to us, and she only sells like native flowers, but she kept talking about these beautiful dahlias that this Erin Brenziken breeds on the West Coast. And we're like, I'm instantly on Facebook, and I was literally thinking about you because you've got some beautiful dahlias that you painted, and turns out you follow her too. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a small world. But
have you at Farms, right?
Yes. Yeah. So have you been there, first of all, because I hear she's like famous, and then have you ever used her flowers for inspiration?
Dreams. I've never been there, but we are pretty close to the area where she has her farm. I believe it's in Skagit Valley. And there are so many dahlia farms here. I went to a really cool event. Oh gosh, now I'm going to forget the name of the farm, but it was like you pick your flowers, and Sarah Simon, she's the mint gardener. She was the first person who introduced watercolor, like in a little workshop that we did together. She's got all kinds of books and stuff, but I went to her event and they had the dahlias and we painted it. It was just so beautiful. So there's no shortage of gorgeous flowers in the area, but I have not been to Erin's farm.
Do you do a lot of your artwork in your studio, or do you go outside and kind of nature journal a little bit?
That's a really great question. So I was reading through your questions ahead of time, and I was like, oh man, I really identify as an indoor cat. You know what I mean? But I think watercolor has brought me more outside. Like I've always been an inside and read and cozy, and like I went to camp and all that, but like I just am more of an indoor hobby kind of person. But as I've become more obsessed with watercolor and more inspired by flowers and nature, I've become like really interested in gardening and like really wanting to go to these flower farms when we go on vacation. And it's been really cool to kind of have that transfer from the page to my inspiration outside. But you can paint about with art, but it very rarely goes somewhere without my kids. So thinking about like we have a 5 and a 3-year-old by the time this is airing. And so it's like thinking about bringing my little notepad. I mean, it's just chaos, but one day I do hope to do that. So long answer short, yes, I like to paint my studio. Sorry. Well, I warned you at the beginning, the ADHD is real.
It makes for a great episode.
That's right.
So speaking of your kids, you kind of had a creative chaos, I guess let's call it, artist date with your kids in a garden space, and they had freedom to snap photos. What inspired you to let him kind of take the reins on that, and what was that experience like for you guys?
Yeah, well, I happened to have their little cameras in the diaper bag for some reason, and I really wanted to go see. We're in the process of like renovating our home, and so we have a lot of and we moved into a new home, so it's like new landscaping, new flowers. Like I just really wanted to see what's popping in the spring here to see what could be a good opportunity for the garden. And I was like, oh, let's bring the kids. I have their cameras. Let's take pictures, because otherwise they'd be like, Mom, like flailing about in the aisles. And so I was like, okay, great. Like you'll go take pictures. And it was so cool to like see all the little, like see it from the angles of where they were, and see all the little like things that they zoomed in on. My daughter was really into finding like the one weird flower out of the group of like 20. And my son was like very interested in the pots that they were in. And so it was just really neat to see like what they were focusing on. And I don't know, I love the idea of doing like these nature photo walks. I mean, you're doing the photography, like how exciting it is to see something and be like, oh, I took a picture.
Yeah. I love taking pictures, and we're drone pilots too, my husband and I. So, we experience different perspectives from the air, and that was really cool. That's why I guess I kind of latched onto that video that you had, because it's the perspective from your kids. It's kind of like you got a little sneak peek inside their head. What's going on?
Now, do you paint references from the photos you take?
We'll be right back. It is hot out, but fall is just around the corner. Why not plan your next New England fall foliage trip with April at yourphototravelguide.com. October 13th through the 19th, 2024, whether you've never used a camera before or you just use your cell phone, you will have plenty of opportunities to capture some of your own postcard-worthy photographs on this tour. Let someone else do the driving so you can experience the most out of fall. This is a low-impact experience, so it is good for those who prefer not to do long hikes or if you simply want to relax. We embrace all the fall feels, tasting maple syrup, smelling the fresh baked breads, and hearing the crunch of the leaves and seeing the light dance on the trees. And for those who prefer to do it themselves for ultimate flexibility, my friend April also crafts personalized itineraries. See selfdrivenewengland.com. Link is in the show notes. Now back to the show. Stay wild. Yeah, so I've got, I don't know if you can see the castle back here. That's Loveland Castle. So there was this guy in the early 1900s. God, that makes us sound so old. He went to World War II and had this whole like experience where he like died and he came back, and his fiance left him while he was dead and married somebody else. And he decided to stay in Europe and tour all these castles. Well, long story short, when he came to Loveland, Ohio in the 50s, he decided to recreate a castle. And so within walking distance to my home, there's a castle, which I absolutely love. You know, a little princess inside of me loves. And we love taking drone photos of it. So I used my drone photo as a reference for that card. And I put a little heart in it because it was for, obviously, Loveland is huge for Valentine's Day. And that was the card for this year, which my niece is very upset. The one that I showed you her picture. She thought that the castle actually had a heart door, and it does not.
Oh, alas.
Alas. So yeah, long story short on my end, a lot of my stuff is all photo references. I like to work in the real space, I guess, other than my crazy hippo and penguin colors over here and my dog.
Yeah, but it's capturing the light of the realism just in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
I went off on a tangent. You did the artist.
I love it.
The show's about you. It's not about me.
Well. I had to ask.
Well, I wanted to ask how you liked going through it's not called the Artist Date.
Oh, the Artist's Way. Yeah.
Artist's Way. Thank you. How did you like that?
Yeah, well, still an active process. I swear it's like a 12-week, 8-week program or something. I am just going at my own pace. They talk about there are a lot of kind of rigid rules. Like you have to do your morning pages every day. You have to go on an artist date every week. You go through it at this stage. And I've just been going really slowly on it because that's where I am in life. Again, 2 little children, business, moving home. It's just been chaos, but I still need that care and nurture in my heart. So, to back up, this is basically this woman, Julie Cameron, wrote a book and she suggests all these practices to help you develop and uncover your inner younger artist. And I found it's been really helpful, very helpful to kind of sort through some of those limiting beliefs and start having a framework to frame my artistic practice with. Whereas before it was just kind of whenever the kids were napping. And guess what? We're out of naps now. So what am I going to do? I mean, we have childcare now and it's a whole thing, but it still can feel really hard to find time for just creating when I'm making all these resources for other people, which I love to do. And I'm not going to grow as an artist if I don't make time to create for myself. So I think what's been really interesting is finding ways that I can adapt this program to work for myself. It's very spiritually based, which is totally fine if that's your jam. It's not my jam. So I've been just in the margins, I kind of make my annotations of how I would adapt it in my mind to work for my beliefs. And another thing that I've changed is she's you got to write it by hand. You've got to do your morning pages, your journal pages, 3 pages by hand. And I'm this brainio is going way too fast for my hand, and my hand's going to start cramping up by page 2. I have too much to say. So I've been typing it for 30 minutes instead, because I found that was kind of how long it took me to do 3 pages. And that was a breakthrough point with my artist's pages, because then I can go back and highlight and look at things and notice themes and include a link if there's something applicable. It's just been really, really cool to kind of make it work for me.
Well, I'm glad I asked you that because I did the Artist's Way. I think it was 2021. And I filled up an entire journal in just that short 12 weeks or whatever it is, because again, ADHD and my brain is going so fast and I'm my words get huge and it was a hot mess. So I had been thinking about putting it in the computer because I can type so much faster, or even the voice to text might work.
Oh yeah.
Too. So because I did find that was super helpful to take that time and get all your thoughts out and on the page.
Yeah.
It really sets you up for the day. And I got to agree with, doing the podcast and trying to get stuff on social media. It is so hard to try and find time to actually sit down and paint.
Yeah.
So
For sure. And if it's not in the calendar, it's not going to happen. So
Exactly. So,
yeah.
well, I'm glad it's been a good experience for you. Do you have any exciting things coming up? I know that we're recording in, end of March. Do you have anything coming up this summer that you'd like to tell people about?
So over the summer, we came out with a ton of new kits of different sizes and kid size kits as well. We have been working really hard to kind of fine tune our kit offerings so that we can offer it to folks at a lower price, which is super exciting. With really great quality products or quality watercolors and materials. So you're starting off with a bang. But I am also really, I don't know if we're going to be quite there yet, but there's something very exciting if you're wanting to have a little bit more community around your painting experience. And I'll leave it at that. I don't know how long we're going to be.
Stay tuned.
Yay! But I always do a fall for watercolor challenge in October. I was like, what? The spooky month in October. So if you are new to moi, follow me on social media and we'll be painting a little painting every day in the fall during the whole month of October and learning about the basics of watercolor. So yeah.
Yes, I love your fall for watercolor. I completely forgot about that. That is a great way to get paint on a page every single day. I've been doing a little sky study every day. So it's been
pretty.
my way to get paint on a page every day. But in October, I love you do start off with the leaves and then it kind of gets a little bit spookier, and it's just so much fun to follow along and see everybody's little version of what your prompt is.
And it's going to look a little bit different this year, so get excited.
Ooh, yes. Awesome. I cannot wait. So how can people find you and stay up to date on all the things that are going on in your world?
Yeah, so I do all kinds of crazy stuff. I do workshops, I offer online resources, our watercolor kits. So the best place to like stay up to date on everything with the most detail is always to join our newsletter, where I share watercolor tips and how to kind of combat tricky situations in watercolor and all our resources that we're sharing. So you can find that with the link in my bio on my social medias, and I'm sure you'll put my website and stuff below. But Splatter and Bloom at Splatter and Bloom on TikTok and at splatter.and.bloom on Instagram, because they love to be difficult. And we're on YouTube as well. Yeah, I don't know, all over the internet.
All over the internet. That's awesome. Is the impending TikTok ban frightening you at all, or?
You know, I was on TikTok Shops and they like randomly kicked me off because something that they cannot explain why. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I have a nice hearty little loyal following on TikTok, and it's been really fun and I love the people, but I know they'll find a way back to me somehow if it doesn't. I don't know. A platform's a platform. The most important thing to me is that people are painting. So
yeah,
whether I'm sharing about it wherever, I'll find a place to shout it from the rooftops.
It's such a bummer. Like, that's how I discovered you, is through TikTok. Yeah. And I've met so many amazing people, and it's been quite a ride, but I'd be sad to see it go. But I'm glad that you have the newsletter and all these other outlets where people can find you and follow you.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool watching your entire thing grow, because I was following you when it was Kate Talcott art, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Kate Talcott artistry. So we switched maybe 2 years. It'll be coming up on 3 years, which is crazy.
So was that a scary process, going from one name to another and the whole rebranding, or did you find that helped you?
You know, I think it helped kind of make it more about the painting and less about like me. Because it isn't about me. It's about the painter, right? The new artist coming to the kits. And it just, I think I always knew I was going to change the name. I just couldn't think of anything good enough. and so I was like, well, I got to start somewhere. So Kate Talcott Artistry it is. That's my name. And then I was like, let's switcheroonie to like a cute little brand name with lots of puns.
I love all the puns. It's so much fun.
Yay!
So it is great. And before we go, what is one tip that you have for someone that would like to connect with nature? Even if it's an indoor cat.
Even for my indoor cats, I think it is, for me, the most fun part about connecting my art with nature is it has helped me look at things a different way. So whatever style of art it is that you might want to do is think about how you could convey that sunset or that bubble or that, I don't know, polywog or whatever, I don't know, like into watercolor or your medium of choice. I think it's a really beautiful and interesting way to look at your surroundings with fresh eyes. I always think, like, anytime I see something that inspires me, I'm like, ooh, that would be fun to paint. How would I do that?
I did notice that when I started getting more into watercolor, I'm like, how can I layer this, and how can it really makes you see the world in a whole new way.
And not to toot watercolors for, I'm absolutely here to toot watercolors for, and like it is a very different way in which you would apply colors for like a acrylic or an oil paint. Like it's almost like backwards from that. So it's a really interesting like thought experiment to figure it out.
Yes. So everybody go over to Kate's website and get some kits so you can start experiencing what we're experiencing with viewing the world. So thank you so much for sharing all of your fun information. And we are looking forward to seeing what is up with this you got going on soon.
It's all very exciting.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was so fun to chat with you.
Yes, thank you. And until next time, get outside and see what develops.
Thanks for joining Wild Development Studio. We hope this exploration into the world of wildlife arts and adventure has sparked a desire to get outside and connect with something wild. If you have an adventure that's awe-inspiring, don't hesitate to share. Click the link in the description to submit your story to have it featured on our show or be a guest. Until next time, keep connecting to the wild and see what develops. The views, opinions, and statements expressed by individuals during Wild Development Studio productions do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Wild Development Studio or its affiliates. Participation in any activities, expeditions, or adventures discussed or promoted during our content may involve inherent risks. It is strongly advised that individuals conduct thorough research, seek professional guidance, and take all necessary precautions before engaging in any such activities. Wild Development Studio, its representatives, or employees shall not be held responsible for any injury, loss, damage, accident, or unforeseen incident that may occur as a result of participating in activities inspired by or discussed in our content. By choosing to engage with our content or act upon any information provided, individuals do so at their own risk and discretion.